Crystal glasses chimed softly as one struck the wooden table. Under the conference lights, the metal microphone gleamed before Jonathan Ward. He flung a thick contract toward his management team, his voice flat and disdainful. This contract's in Japanese. Whoever translates it in 10 minutes gets my day's pay. 25 grand. Laughter rippled through the hall. Heels clicked. Silverware clinked against glass. At the far corner, Naomi Carter froze mid-step, the tray trembling in her hands. Her silver pendant brushed against a glass, ringing with a faint, clear note. Ward leaned forward, a slow smile cutting across his face like a blade. Maybe the waitress wants to give it a try? The crowd erupted again, their laughter echoing off the glass walls. Naomi bowed her head, fingers gripping the tray until her knuckles turned white. A drop of red wine slid down, landing right on the engraved word on her pendant. Truth. She lifted her gaze. The stage lights caught in her eyes. Ward noticed that look. He hesitated, then smirked. Really? You can read, can't you? The question hung in the air as the music swelled, and the tray in Naomi's hands began to shake. After the banquet, Naomi Carter quietly removed her apron and walked down the hallway to the kitchen. The dishwasher roared in the background, steam fogging up the small mirror she always used to check that her uniform was spotless before stepping out to serve. Around her neck, the silver pendant still felt warm from being clenched in her hand all night. 3 faintly engraved words. Truth. Voice, bridge, glimmered under the pale fluorescent light. Her apartment sat on the 5th floor of an old building near the train station. The wooden door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged woman at the table, hearing aids tucked behind her ears. You're home? Her mother asked with a weak smile. Naomi nodded gently and placed a bag of leftover bread on the table. She worked 3 jobs, mornings as a freelance translator, afternoons serving at events, and nights transcribing medical documents for a small firm. Every dollar she saved went toward her mother's medication and the hospital debts. She never complained. She just kept a quiet ritual. Every morning she'd place the pendant in her palm and whisper a few Japanese words her father once taught her. Kotoba wa hashida. Words are bridges. Only then would she begin her day. That night, as she leaned over the desk to check her translation emails, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown sender appeared on the screen. Silverbird, stay out of Ward's business. Naomi stared at the words, her heartbeat quickening. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance through the cracked window pane, warning of the storm on its way. The next morning, golden light streamed through the glass walls of the lobby. Naomi carried a tray of coffee into the conference room when Ward's voice suddenly cut through the chatter. Anyone still want to test their luck for that 25 grand from yesterday? The room burst into laughter, sharp as glass striking glass. A young executive called out, half joking, half cruel. That waitress seemed to recognize a few words, Mr. Ward. Ward turned his head, catching sight of Naomi by the coffee machine. Ah, that's right, he said slowly. You still haven't sent your apology for spilling wine last night. Naomi pressed her lips together. I cleaned the table, sir. Ward raised a brow. Good. Then next time, remember to clean your pride before touching confidential documents. Laughter exploded again. A cup tipped, spilling hot coffee down Naomi's wrist, but she steadied the tray without flinching. Just then, Ethan Cole, the head of marketing, stepped in with a crooked smile. Word is, someone left a few translated lines on the table last night. Pretty impressive, actually. Too bad security saw only one staff member up there. He placed his phone on the table. The screen showed grainy security footage. A small-frame woman with her hair in a bun, moving around the conference table. Every eye turned toward Naomi. She froze, recognizing the white cloth in the woman's hand. Her own. Explaining would only make her look guiltier. Ward folded his arms, his tone smooth and cold. Tell you what, if you truly know how to translate, read a few lines from the document. If not, I'll consider this an unauthorized breach. The air thickened. Naomi glanced at the paper on the table. Rows of dense Japanese technical text. Sir, I'm not authorized to handle classified materials, she said quietly. Ward smirked, turning to Ethan. Noted. Suspicious. Have security handle it. As Naomi stepped out of the room, her phone buzzed. A message flashed from the same unknown number as last night. I warned you. Now let's see who still believes you. She stopped in the hallway, heart heavy. The glass panels around her reflected three faint versions of herself. Blurred, uneven, unsure which one was real. Behind her, the conference door clicked shut. The sound of the lock echoed before she could turn back. At noon, the Ward Innovations cafeteria buzzed with the sound of spoons clinking against trays. Naomi sat alone in a corner, scrolling through unfinished translation emails on her phone. A company bulletin suddenly flashed across the cafeteria TV. Service staff suspected of accessing confidential documents. Investigation in progress. Every spoon stopped midair. Heads turned. Whispers began to spread. Guess she really did it. I saw her wandering near the boardroom last night. Naomi stood, trying to escape the stares. At the water counter, Lisa, a co-worker who once called her a friend, avoided her eyes. I'm sorry, Lisa whispered. They said if anyone defends you, they'll be questioned too. Then she turned and walked away. The silence grew so heavy that Naomi could hear her pendant brushing against her collarbone. The elevator doors slid open. Ethan Cole stepped out with two security officers, a folder in hand. We need to check your locker, he said evenly, as if announcing a meeting. People gathered, phones raised halfway, half curious, half hungry for spectacle. A quiet, public kind of execution. The locker door creaked open. Among a few personal items, Ethan pulled out a thick envelope sealed with the company logo. He held it up. Evidence? A copy of the confidential file. Naomi froze. She had never seen it before. I don't know how that got there. Ward appeared in the doorway, his expression like ice. Disappointing, Carter. I actually thought you were different. A guard stepped forward, asking for her ID badge. Naomi looked around. Everyone had turned their backs. Camera shutters clicked in quick bursts. Amid the chaos, one small detail caught her eye. The silver ring on Ethan's hand. He was twisting it gently. The same nervous habit she'd noticed whenever he lied in meetings. As security escorted her out, Naomi glanced over her shoulder. On the giant digital screen behind her, an ad for Ward's new project played, displaying several Japanese lines identical to the ones she had translated by hand the night before. She stopped, breath catching in her chest. Someone had used her work. Someone was profiting from her humiliation. Before she could turn back, the security doors slammed shut, sealing off the world outside. By afternoon, rain had begun to fall, its fine drops tapping steadily on the glass roof of Ward Innovation's third floor. In the surveillance office, Naomi sat across from the head of security, her employee badge lying on the table before her. For the third time, she said quietly, I never touched that document. The man didn't reply. He simply turned the monitor toward her. The footage from the previous night appeared clearly on screen. A woman in a service uniform entering the conference room at 9:46 p.m. Below it, the caption read, Silverbird, activity detected. Naomi froze. That's not me. I never used the Silverbird account on company computers. The officer shrugged. Then how do you explain this? He slid a printed access log across the table. Real system receipts, time-stamped. Naomi studied them. The IP address didn't match her device, but it matched Ethan Cole's exactly. A spark of hope flickered. Then the door opened. Ethan walked in, his suit perfectly dry despite the rain outside, with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. I hear Ms. Carter's accusing a co-worker now, he said lightly, pulling a folder from his briefcase and handing it to security. Here's confirmation I was in a meeting with the marketing team at that exact time. There's video proof. Naomi stood abruptly. You set me up. You planted that file in my locker. Ethan looked at her with a kind of pity. Proof, Naomi. Where's your proof? The words caught in her throat. The evidence? He already had it all. The security chief nodded. We're placing you on temporary suspension pending investigation. Sign here, please. Her hand trembled as she signed. As they escorted her out, a young employee hurried past and dropped a stack of papers. The pages fanned open on the floor, and Naomi caught a glimpse of the Hibana Tech logo, the Japanese partner company whose contract she translated overnight. The documents were being faxed overseas. She turned toward Ethan. His eyes narrowed slightly, a silent warning. Stay quiet, Naomi, he said under his breath. Don't make this worse. The air seemed to vanish from the room, leaving only the relentless drumming of rain against the glass, cold and unending. Naomi clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, her lips splitting with the taste of blood. She didn't answer. She just looked straight at him and whispered almost to herself, "Someone will hear the truth." The words fell heavy in the silence, like a stone dropped into still water. By morning, the rain had stopped. The gray sky reflected off the glass walls of Ward Innovations. A taxi pulled up at the gate. Naomi Carter stepped out, her damp coat clinging to her frame. She no longer wore an employee badge, only carried a small USB drive in her hand, and her eyes were calm, like the air after a storm. She walked straight into the lobby. A guard blocked her way, but she held up a document stamped with the seal of Hibana Tech, Ward's Japanese partner. Translation consultant, urgent meeting, requested by Ward Innovations. The guard hesitated, then let her through. On the 15th floor, a strategy meeting was underway. Jonathan Ward sat at the head of the table, surrounded by executives. Internal reporters were filming the signing of a new contract. Ethan Cole stood nearby, ready to present the final translation, the same contract Naomi had seen faxed overseas the night before. When she entered, the room rippled with surprise. The cameras kept rolling. Ward frowned. "Who let you in here?" Naomi placed the USB on the table. "Mr. Ward, this contract has been altered. I have proof." A low murmur spread through the room. Ethan gave a mocking laugh. "Again?" "She's been suspended, remember?" Naomi said nothing. She simply pulled out her phone and tapped the play button. The projector lit up the wall with clear security footage, Ethan spilling coffee on her laptop, then plugging in his own USB to copy data. The image resolution was high enough to catch the flash of his silver ring as he turned his wrist. Silence fell. The camera panned slowly. Ward rose from his seat, his eyes sharp as glass. "Explain this, Ethan." Ethan stammered. It's a misunderstanding. I was just helping her back up her files." Naomi cut him off, her voice calm and steady. "And you also backed up the $25,000 reward by putting your name on my translation." Ward turned to the company videographer. "Keep recording. I want everything documented." All eyes and lenses turned to the center of the table. Naomi opened the original document, her finger tracing the Japanese text. This word, koshichawa, means workforce balance, not personnel reduction, as he translated. And here, she pointed to the final paragraph, it clearly states that Hibana reserves the right to cancel the contract in cases of falsification or translation theft. Ward's gaze moved from the screen to Ethan. "Is that true?" Ethan didn't answer. Sweat gathered on his forehead, the silver ring spinning nervously on his finger. Then a voice came from behind. Lisa, once her silent coworker, stepped forward, holding a printed email. "I found this in the system," she said, reading aloud. "Send the edited translation to Hibana. Delete original metadata. Sender Ethan Cole." The second receipt landed like a final blow. The room erupted. Some whispered. Others lifted their phones to film. Naomi didn't look at Ethan anymore. She turned to Ward, her tone steady but trembling at the edges. "My father once worked for you. You fired him when he warned you about ethics. He told me something I never forgot. When language is twisted, truth dies first. Today, I just want it to live again." Ward stood motionless. Outside, the clouds broke apart. An array of sunlight cut through the conference room, striking Naomi's silver pendant. The engraved words "Truth Voice Bridge" gleamed bright in the camera lens. Ethan lunged for the USB, but Ward signaled security. Chairs toppled. The camera caught the moment he was restrained. Amid the chaos, Naomi didn't back away. She picked up her fallen pendant, fastened it around her neck, and said firmly, "You may hate the way I speak up, but right now our Japanese partner is hearing the real translation." Ward turned toward the screen. On the live video call, Hibana Tech's representative had just connected, his expression grave. He spoke in clear Japanese. "We wish to continue this project, but only with Miss Carter." No one breathed. People exchanged glances, realizing what couldn't be undone. Before Ward could respond, Naomi inclined her head slightly, her voice calm, almost serene. "Mr. Ward, Would you like me to translate that into English for you? The words cut through the silence like a fine blade. And for the first time, the balance of power in the room shifted entirely to her. Noonlight poured through the tall glass windows of the top-floor conference room. Outside in the hallway, dozens of employees had gathered, pressing close to the glass to catch a glimpse of what was happening. The company's internal camera was still live, broadcasting the contract signing to every branch. No one realized this moment would become the most public confrontation in Ward Innovation's history. In the center of the room, Naomi Carter stood still, both hands resting on the table. Cold air from the vents drifted across the glass, making the silver pendant on her neck tremble and glint under the pale light. At the other end of the table, Jonathan Ward crossed his arms. His voice was calm but heavy, every word landing like the strike of a gavel. "You've interrupted an official signing. You have no right to be here. Leave now, or I'll have you escorted out." Naomi pressed her lips together, fighting to steady her breath. In her mind, her father's voice echoed, "When they take your voice, you still have the truth." But those words weren't enough to drown out the fear tightening in her chest. Behind Ward, Ethan Cole smirked, his smile as thin as a blade. "I think we've been more than patient, Mr. Ward," he said. "A suspended employee barging into an executive meeting? That's quite a story." He turned toward the crowd outside the glass doors, raising his voice for effect. "Anyone here think she's innocent?" No one answered. Only the shuffle of chairs, a few glances that looked anywhere but at her. The silence pressed down, thick and heavy. Ward gave a slight nod. Two security guards began to move forward. Naomi stepped back until her spine hit the edge of the table, her pulse hammering. Her phone rang. The sharp sound sliced through the tense air. A communications staffer picked it up, his face shifting from strained to pale. "There's a call from Habana Tech," he said, his voice trembling. "They're requesting the translation session continue, but only if Ms. Carter's present." Every head turned. Ward's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Ethan rushed forward to grab the phone, but Naomi stepped ahead of him, her voice clear and unwavering. "They want me to complete the translation, Mr. Ward. You know they won't sign if I leave this room." Ward's voice dropped lower, rougher. "You think you have power here? You're just a waitress who once spilled wine on the ballroom floor." Naomi let out a quiet breath, a small, knowing smile touching her face. "Maybe I did clean floors, but at least I can read every word of the contract you're about to sign." A murmur rippled through the back rows. The camera panned slowly, catching Naomi's face in the soft wash of light, tired, but steady and bright. Before Ward could reply, the door swung open. Helen Ward, the honorary chairwoman and founding shareholder, entered with two assistants. The room fell silent. The silver-haired woman in a pale gray suit surveyed the scene before fixing her gaze on Naomi. "I just received a message from our Japanese partners," she said evenly, her tone calm yet sharp as steel. "They sent their compliments on Miss Carter's translation and have requested she continue as language advisor." Ward froze. Ethan stepped back half a pace, his face draining of color. Naomi said nothing, only drew a long breath as her hand tightened around her pendant. Sunlight cut through the window, falling across the table, a single bright line dividing the room in two. Helen moved closer and placed a thick envelope on the table. "Inside is the confirmation of an operational error from the marketing department." She turned to Ethan, her expression unflinching. "I'd like to hear your explanation." No one moved. The entire room seemed locked in stillness and blinding light. Ethan stood rigid, throat dry, a bead of sweat rolling down his wrist where the silver ring kept spinning. Naomi met his eyes, her voice quiet but firm. "Will you speak?" she said. "Or should I play the recording?" The question cut through the room like a blade of glass. And in that suspended moment, no one dared to breathe. The air in the conference room hung thick as fog. Everyone held their breath, waiting for Ethan to speak. The silver ring on his hand kept spinning, its cold reflection flashing against the glass wall. Naomi Carter stood still, her fingertips resting lightly on the table. The silence stretched so long you could hear the wall clock ticking second by second. Ethan swallowed hard and tried to smile. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I never..." Naomi didn't let him finish. She unlocked her phone and tapped the screen. A faint crackle came from the small speaker, Ethan's voice calm and unmistakable. Put the file in her locker. I'll take care of the rest. Don't let Ward find out. A sharp gasp cut through the air. Then another. The room erupted in stunned disbelief. Ward spun around, his face drained of color, while Helen Ward simply nodded to the tech staff to project the audio on the big screen. Subtitles appeared beneath every word, clear, undeniable. Naomi spoke slowly, her voice steady and low. This recording came from an anonymous account last night, but I verified it. The IP matches a system in the marketing department. Ethan stumbled back half a step, his lips trembling, his hand twisting the ring harder. You forged! Naomi handed over another set of papers. This is the original contract signed by Hibana Tech. Compare this signature to the one you gave Mr. Ward this morning. Helen signaled her assistant to enlarge the image. Two signatures appeared side by side, one genuine, one scanned and printed. The difference was impossible to miss. Ward rose slowly, eyes locked on Ethan. You forged a contract? Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but Lisa stepped forward, her voice clear and firm. I can confirm it. I saw him sending that translation at 2 in the morning. He said he was just checking for typos, but... She paused, glancing at Naomi, paying back a debt of silence. But I knew she was the real translator. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People who had mocked Naomi earlier now looked at her differently, not with pity, but respect. The camera panned across the room, capturing faces that had been turned away, now quietly ashamed. Ward exhaled, his voice rough. Mr. Cole, I've heard enough. Security. 2 guards moved in. Ethan shouted, voice cracking. You won't land another contract without me. Naomi met his eyes, calm and unflinching. Maybe, but you forgot one thing. Language never betrays anyone. Only people betray language. The guards gripped his arms. The silver ring slipped from his finger, hitting the tile with a sharp, echoing clang. That single sound closed the chapter on his lies. He was led away, the door closing behind him with a slow, final click. Helen turned to Naomi. Miss Carter, Hibana Tech is online. They'd like you to take part in the renewed signing. Naomi nodded softly. She walked to the table and opened the corrected translation. Line by line, her voice carried through the room. Clear, composed, her Japanese steady and melodic. Ward stood beside her. His expression changed. The arrogance was gone. What remained was something closer to quiet recognition. When she finished, the Hibana representative nodded on the screen. Perfect. We officially confirm our partnership. For a moment, the room stayed silent. Then someone began to clap. One pair of hands became 2, then 3, until applause filled the space like a rising tide. The camera caught Naomi's face, her breath still unsteady, her eyes glistening, and the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Ward spoke at last, his tone low and sincere. Ms. Carter, thank you. You saved this company. Naomi didn't reply. She removed her silver pendant and set it gently on the table. Light from the window struck it, revealing the engraved words beneath. Her voice was soft, but every word cut through the still air. The record is clear now, Mr. Ward. I didn't just save the company. I saved my own name. Ward looked at her, words caught in his throat. No one else spoke. Only the sunlight glinting off the pendant remained, bright, unwavering, like the final witness to the truth. Then the applause rose again, louder, fuller, echoing through every floor. No one said another word. Justice had spoken. The company issued an internal announcement stating that Ethan Cole had been terminated and charged with document forgery and data manipulation. He was last seen leaving the building in a light rain, his soaked suit clinging to his back. The silver ring on his hand was gone, replaced only by the reflection of the city lights on his pale face. No one saw him off. Not a single goodbye. The rain mingled with the click of reporters' cameras, marking the quiet end of a chapter. That same day, Jonathan Ward stood before the board of directors to account for what had happened. In the late afternoon light filtering through the blinds, he read the entire report aloud. Every line felt like a blade cutting through his old pride. When the meeting ended, Helen Ward spoke only once. No one is too important to relearn the lesson of respect. Ward didn't answer. He simply nodded. Then his eyes found Naomi at the far end of the room, standing by the window where sunlight touched her face. He walked over, stopped a few feet away, and said softly, his voice rough and tired, "I owe you an apology and a chance." Naomi bowed her head slightly, not out of bitterness, but with the quiet understanding that real justice never needs to shout. Weeks later, on her first morning back at the company, Naomi stepped out of the elevator wearing a new title, Director of Cultural and Language Relations. It was the same elevator that had once taken her down after her badge was revoked. Now the hallway lights seemed brighter, and the faces that once turned away smiled in greeting. Lisa approached and gave her a gentle hug. "I'm sorry for staying silent so long," Naomi smiled kindly. "I understand. We're all afraid of losing our place until we realize where we truly stand." That afternoon, she held a small meeting with the janitorial and service staff. They sat shyly in the back rows, unused to being invited to speak. Naomi stood by the whiteboard, her voice warm and unhurried. "I used to be where you are. I know what it's like to feel invisible, but sometimes the quietest people understand this company the best." The room filled with soft but genuine applause. A young employee raised a timid hand. "Do you ever regret it? Speaking up?" Naomi looked toward the window where the sunset cast gold light across the opposite building. "Yes," she said, "but only for a few seconds. Then I remember what my father once told me. When the truth is distorted, give it back its voice." She walked to her desk and opened the drawer. Inside was her silver pendant, returned by Helen Ward with a small note. "Let the light of truth guide you as it once guided us." Naomi smiled and clasped the pendant around her neck. The metal felt cool against her skin, yet warmth spread through her chest. That evening, she visited her mother at the hospital. The small room glowed under a soft yellow light, the steady rhythm of the heart monitor filling the air. Her mother smiled as Naomi entered, holding a bouquet of lavender. "You did it, my girl," she said gently through her hearing aid. "You made them listen." Naomi sat by the bed holding her mother's hand. "I didn't make them listen, Mom." The truth spoke for itself. As she left, she paused in the hospital hallway, gazing through the window at the city below. The rain from the night before had washed away the dust, leaving every window lit like tiny lamps connected by unseen bridges. Months later, at the company's annual recognition ceremony, Naomi stood on stage beneath soft lighting. The entire staff was there, engineers, managers, and janitors alike. Her voice was calm, not loud, but it carried through every corner of the hall. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it only whispers, in the hearts of those brave enough to tell the truth. Helen gave a quiet nod. Ward sat in the front row, hands clasped, eyes steady. Lisa leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "That's not just her story. It's ours." Naomi ended her speech, unclasped the silver pendant, and placed it inside a glass case engraved with the words, "Truth, Voice, Bridge." Sunlight from the skylight caught the pendant, bending into a faint rainbow that arched across the room. The audience stayed silent at first. No applause, only the soft sound of people rising to their feet, a few wiping their eyes as if witnessing something beyond triumph. Then from the back of the hall came the first clap, then another. Then hundreds joined, echoing through every floor. Naomi bowed her head, her breath light as wind. The story closed in the warm light of dusk as the final sunbeam touched the silver pendant, and somewhere a quiet voice seemed to echo, slow and steady, like a reminder carried by time. Justice doesn't always thunder. Sometimes it only whispers.